Yeah, I started years ago. Yeah, I listened to, well, I'm going to Jordan Peterson, so that's gonna be awesome.
Ooh.
It's funny, because I've got the mic on, I'm not gonna say anymore.
And I've already started videotaping.
Oh, have you? Great!
Which I can
Yeah,
edit
because you can
out.
edit everything? Okay.
You
So,
like blooper rolls.
the blooper roll. It's when I drop the F-bomb.
Yeah.
Oh, fudge.
Fudge.
Oh, fudge.
Fiddlesticks.
Oh, fiddlesticks.
Is
Okay.
someone bleeding? No. Why is this open? Okay. Maybe kill this one.
Ready? Is everybody settled?
Is everyone ready? Okay. And action.
Okay, everybody. Okay, so when we go to make our sports guard, we're going to be prepping our models the same way as you would for a whitening tray. So you're going to be cutting back all of the phalange areas, and you're going to be cutting a hole in it. So if you can use the same model as you did with your whitening tray. If it's missing some anatomy, then go back to the other models that you have saved up for your sports guard, okay? So I've trimmed back the model, and you're going to be marking this one a little bit different as well. We're going to be going right up to the vestibule, all right? And we're going to be making our frenum attachments, frenum reliefs in off our model, because when we make our sports guard is going to be covering up into this area, okay? So before you do your suck down, make sure that you mark your model. So I'm going to be getting this ready to go, because this is going to take a few more minutes. It's going to take a little bit longer to heat up than our whitening tray material, so I'm going to let that do its thing. And I'm just going to briefly discuss the new instruments we're going to be working with. So we're going to be working with something called a hot knife, and that is exactly what it is. It's a hot knife, okay? It has two portals here, portal A, portal B. It can access two different knife parts, knife apparatus. And so when you turn it on, make sure that the portal is hooked up to the proper instrument that you're using, okay? It does have a gauge on it from 1 to 9 or 1 to 10. Start off about 6 or 7, okay? So when you do start using this, it will smoke a bit. Make sure you have good ventilation when you're working with this. And another safety feature with this, because it's a hot knife and an instrument, you don't want it touching these cords, right? So always keep that hot part away from any electrical cord that's there, because it'll probably catch fire, all right? When it's not in use, please turn it off and put it in the cradle, right? Put it in the cradle. Do not set it on the counter because it's hot, and just be aware of it, because, you know, if it touches paper, it could burn the counter, so just be really careful with the hot knife, okay? And then we're also going to use an electric Dremel tool. And this is going to help with your polishing and shaping your sports guard. So it is electric, so it just has an on-off switch. It has a forward and a reverse, but we're just going to keep it in forward. So the nice thing about this electric Dremel, it is it's compatible with the straight hand pieces that we have within the clinic. So we only have one electric hand piece here right now. If you do need to use one of these for polishing, you can go into an available operatory. Just get a straight hand piece, get the appropriate straight hand piece attachments that you need, whether it be polishing or cutting, and you can work with those in the operatory. So I'm going to keep an eye on my sports guard. I have it labeled, it's centered in there. Now I'm ready to do my suck down, okay? Actually, I'm just going to give it about another 30 seconds. This material is quite a bit thicker than the whitening tray material. So, but you do want it to go down about 1 inch to 2 inches. Okay, so that's ready to go. Turn that away, put that down, turn that on. And we're going to let it run for about 30 seconds or so. And we want it to keep going just until it's not so tacky on the top here, okay? kits, you will have a couple pieces of your sports guard material. At least, make 2 of them. Think of the first one that you make as a practice one, and then make a good one. If you get the first one done perfectly right away, that's great, but I do recommend making 2, all right? If you do break the teeth off of your model, then you've got a black backup model, you can make another one off of that one as well. Okay, so I'm gonna take this off and peel that off, and it's still a little bit tacky, so I'm just gonna run it under some cold water to set it up. There. All right. So now we're ready. Now we're ready to separate the model from the sports guard material. Okay. So it's really important to try to keep the integrity of the sports guard around the alveolar ridge there, because that's exactly what we need it for. When people are playing sports, what this does is it cushions the blow if they get hit in the face from hockey or soccer or whatever sport they're playing. Okay, so when I'm starting to use the hot knife here, I normally would do it in front of the fans, but because we're recording this, I'm just going to do it here. It will smoke a lot, so when I'm cutting this, I'm fulcruming, and I'm just going to make this a little hotter. Okay, and I'm going to just kind of do a bulk trim right now. Take off some of the material. Take off enough. Yeah, don't worry, there's no fire yet. Okay, we'll separate that. There, so I would recommend wearing a mask when you're doing this. Okay, and I'm just going to go around and, like I said, just kind of do initially take off the majority of this material. Okay, and just peel that back. Now you have to be careful that you don't pull on it too much, especially because it's still a little bit warm. If you pull on it too much right at this point, it could distort it and affect the fit of the guard. There we go. I'm going to keep coming back around. You're going to be covering a little bit of the palette. The line that's being drawn around that area is just behind the rugae. Okay.
And remember, you don't need to preheat the hot knives.
No. You don't need to preheat the hot knife. It is hot instantly. There, it's a little bit challenging to get it off the palatal area, but yeah, there it goes. There it goes. So I'm just going to cut this just like that. This is very, very efficient cutting it. So you won't be able to do this with scissors, just because the material is way too thick for that. Okay, so now I've got that initial bulk reduction. So I'm going to take that off, and now I'm going to just try to peel this back a little bit. If I'm having a hard time removing it, this is where we break off the central incisors and the laterals, just because you're putting a lot of pressure and sort of reefing against it to separate it. If I find I have too many undercuts here and it's kind of locked in too much, I can take my hot knife again and just take a little bit more off just to relieve it. Okay, just like that. It will get locked into the undercuts, but don't take too much off too fast. The theory is, measure twice, cut once, because if you cut it back too short, then you're remaking a new one. Okay, so we're going to carefully separate this off the model, and sometimes we just kind of have to peel it back a little bit. This material is very forgiving, somewhat, as long as it's not too hot. There we go. Okay, so I can take it off the anterior. Good. Okay, got it off in one piece and without breaking the model. All right, so now I've got sort of the bulk structure of my sports guard. And so now what I can do, I can go back to the hot knife and I can take off some really big sort of bulky areas. And it'll show in the outline. With the pencil mark, it will transfer onto the sports guard. So you can go by that as a guide. You don't want to, like I said, you don't want to take off too much. Okay, so I'm just going to take off just a little bit of the ledges here. Okay. There. And you can also outline your frenum relief with this, with the hot knife. And then we can just polish them and define them with our polishers, which is what I'm going to show you next. There we go. So somebody can use this and look like they have very white teeth. We've got different colors of sports guard material. Normally in practice, we'll ask our patients what color they want. If they, we usually have a sheet to show them options of what color of guards that they can wear. Okay, all right. So now what we can do is go and start polishing it. So with our electric handpiece here, I've got a coarse disc, and I can turn it on. I can turn it up a little bit higher. I'm going to hold it sort of in a palm grasp, and I'm going to use my thumb as a fulcrum, okay? And I can start trimming it back like this. Now as I'm starting to trim, I've got an awful lot of material that I need to trim off. So I would actually go back and hot knife some of this off, just because I'd be sitting here forever trying to trim that. So I'm going to do this once I take that little piece off and trim this back. So I'm going to show you a few different ways to polish it and to trim it. So hot knife is good for bulk. There. Like I said, this does a really fast job. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to go back to this. And these come with different attachments as well. And so with our contra angle, to release it, to open the chuck, you just twist it, take it off, and then you can put on a different one. So this one, it's another abrasiveness. It doesn't do a lot of trimming. It's more like a coarse polish. And then we have these really cool little buff rag wheels. We can do chair side. But I will show you the big rag wheel over in the corner, which does an amazing job. And then there's these other ones. We're not going to use these quite yet for the sports guard. So I'm just going to put the coarse disc on, coarse point, turn it up. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go along the edges here and start smoothing down the edges. And what I'm actually doing, I'm smoothing it, but I'm also feathering and tapering that ledge, because this is the edge that's going to sit up just underneath the vestibule, right where the attached gingiva meets the unattached gingiva. You don't want this impinging on the unattached gingiva because it can be quite uncomfortable. So you want to run your finger over it, make sure it's nice and smooth. Okay, just like that. So this is one way to do some polishing, okay? And using these actually works really well because it can actually define your frenum relief, just like that, okay? So you can hold it either in a palm grasp or a pen grasp. Okay, so do what works for you. Try both ways. Okay, so there's that one. And then I'm going to go over and I'm just going to show you the rag wheel. And the rag wheel works really well as well. It has a high setting and a low setting. You can just kind of get your bearings with the low setting at first. And then when you go on a high setting, make sure you have this in your hand and you have a firm grasp, okay? And when you bring it up to the rag wheel, hold it and then just do really fine sweeping motions on the rag wheel. This will create a nice matte finish. It'll take the shininess out of the guard. It will do a little bit of reduction, but the longer you hold it on this rag wheel, it will reduce it a little bit. Now this rag wheel is it's a rag wheel, it's very soft. It's not for cutting. If you hold the material on for too long, it will melt and kind of bead up. But it does a nice finish on your guard, okay? Can define the frenum relief quite nice. So when you're making your guard and you're trimming and trimming and trimming and having a good old time, always try it back on the model, okay? Because that's gonna be your reference point. So when you, actually I can grab one from here. When you keep trying it back on the model, because you won't be, your patient isn't there yet, so you can always try it on your model. Make sure that you haven't taken away your frenum attachments or cut too much away, okay? So it's just a nice, easy way to polish your sports scarf, okay? Run your finger over it, make sure there's nothing jagged, make sure there's no sort of beaded up parts, okay? And polishing these are actually very satisfying. I love doing them just because you're making a little piece of art. And just remember that when you're making a sports guard, always ask yourself, is this going to be worth the money that your patient is going to be paying for it? You know, whether they're charging $300, $400, $500, you don't want to give something to your patient that, you know, is kind of ratty looking. Make it look aesthetically pleasing. Keep trying it back on the model. Make sure that it fits right up against, it fits tight against the teeth, and it goes right up into the vestibule, because this is what we need to protect. So in sports, when they get a blow, this is what it needs to protect. Protect the bone and protect the teeth, okay? Any questions? Pretty straightforward? Excellent. Okay, cut.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
For the hours,
Yes.
how much are you cutting?
So actually, I would cut a little bit of this back. So as I'm polishing it, when I go in here, see, this is where I left a fair bit of bulk here.
Yeah.
I would actually probably go back in with the hot knife, take some more of that out, and then polish that off.
How much do you want to keep? Like, are you just keeping a little bit?
So when you're tracing on your model, right,
Oh, just follow the-
right behind the rugae,
Oh, okay.
right? So as you're tracing it, it's going right behind the rugae.
Okay.
So this is a little bit too much bulked up. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Lorna.
Thank you.